Subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon to never miss any update from Rouse IAS Study Circle. Join the only official Telegram channel of Rouse IAS Study Circle to get the relevant materials and important updates. Hello and welcome to the Daily News Simplified. The what, why and how of the newspaper analysis from the Civil Service Examinations perspective. So today we are going to discuss the Hindu Delhi edition dated 25th June 2022. Topics which are to be discussed have been enlisted on your screen and the timestamping of the same has been provided in the description box below.
QIP is actually what you want for the exam.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that are already there.
Yes.
But what is needed for the exam is what the QIP is giving you. QIP is actually quality improvement because I owe my success to it.
तो रैंकर्स बैच हैज़ चेंज. आई थिंक मेरी रैंक आई है बिकॉज ऑफ द रैंकर्स बैच. तो रैंकर्स बैच ज्वाइन करने के बाद आई थिंक मेरी वो टेंशन ख़त्म हो गई थी. एक कांस्टेंट गाइडेंस थी मेरे पास कि मुझे क्या पढ़ना है, कैसे पढ़ना है, कितने टेस्ट लिखने हैं. टेस्ट इवैल्यूएट करने में सर ने बहुत हेल्प की. एक एक टेस्ट के बाद सर और मैं बैठ के डिस्कस करते थे एक एक आंसर इनफैक्ट कि इस आंसर में कौन सा एग्जाम्पल गलत था या सही था, कैसे उसको इम्प्रूव करें.
मेंटर तो राउज में मतलब अलग ही लेवल में मेंटरशिप मिली थी. अभिषेक सर मेरे मेंटोर थे. अच्छा. तो ओवरऑल मेरे को काफ़ी वार्म सा सपोर्टिव सा एनवायरनमेंट मिला था राउज से और मेरे को काफ़ी अच्छा लगा था.
Okay.
So as you heard it from the toppers, how the QIP program helped them in acing this year's examination. Now the prelims result is already out and you might be wondering how to prepare in the next 3 months for this year's mains examination. The basic question that might be coming in your mind is that what are the key components of the QIP program? Let us listen it from Gaurav sir.
Yes. So there are three very important elements of QIP mains. The first is of course the revision cum answer writing practice classes, for which the notes shall be provided in the form of Compass Maxi. Then the second important element of mains QIP is the mains test series, which will include very intensive feedback and evaluation. And then the third and the most important element of QIP mains is mentorship. And I think no one is better than you, Mangal sir, to throw some light on mentorship program.
Mentorship is important to declutter the process of this examination. We are going to handhold you to give you personalized solutions to your problems, be it answer writing, be it understanding the topics and also understanding the pace at which you are preparing for this examination. Also, there are certain specific areas which require improvements like essay writing, ethics answer writing and also answer writing for the general studies papers 1, 2 and 3. And that is why this personalized feedback and handholding is going to do wonders as it did for this year's toppers for the 2021.
So for those who have cleared the prelims examination, first and foremost, congratulations. And secondly, there is a link in the description of the video, which you can click, which will take you to submit a form. And after submitting that form, we are going to contact you. So do fill out this form by clicking the link in the description of the video. And all the best for mains 2022.
All the best.
Our first topic is in relation to the news that recently United Nations chief has warned that food shortage catastrophe might occur in the world because of the Russian-Ukraine war. However, there are other reasons also enlisted, for example, the disruptions caused due to climate change, COVID pandemic and inequality. This news article has appeared at page number 11 in today's The Hindu Daily edition. As far as the syllabus is concerned, this topic falls directly under General Studies Mains Paper 3 section because it mentions the economic development and in the micro section it mentions the issues of the food security explicitly. Going by the previous year question paper analysis, there have been several times the questions are being asked from particularly the theme of food security. For example, in UPSC 2013, the question was asked linking the food security to the subsidy bill and the associated WTO issues. The question said that the food security bill is expected to eliminate the hunger and malnutrition in India. There are certain apprehensions in its effective implementation along with the concerns it has generated in WTO. In 2017, the theme of food security was linked with the agricultural revolutions which we have witnessed from time to time. The question asks you to explain the various types of revolutions that took place in agriculture after independence in India, for example, Green Revolution, White Revolution, etc., and how these revolutions have helped in poverty alleviation and food security in India. To answer both these questions, the basic requirement is that you must be aware about the concept of the food security, its all the components, various challenges associated with it, the government steps which have already been taken, as well as the future strategy. So that is why in today's session, we are going to deal with all these components. We will deal with the basic concept of the food security, evolution of the food security system in India, then we will discuss certain challenges involved, and then we will also come up with a future strategy through which we can ensure food security within our national boundaries. So now let us start this discussion in detail by first focusing on the concept of food security. Now, according to the Food and Agriculture Organization, the basic definition of food security includes that the food must be accessible to all the people at all the times. That means it should be regular, it should be continuous, and it should be reliable in nature. Now first I would like to know that what do you think as the concept of food security? Is it just related to the amount or quantity of the food? If, for example, I say that there is a particular person and he is getting adequate food at all times whenever he or she desires so, can we call that person food secured? To answer this particular question, you should know that food security includes two components. One is the quantitative part and the other is the qualitative part. Obviously, the first and the basic requirement is that adequate quantity of food must be available to all at all times. But then there is second important component also which focuses not on the quantity but the quality of the part. Whether that food which is available to all the people is suitable to their dietary patterns and habits. Is it able to supply all the essential nutrients which are required to form a healthy body? So that is why it is to be recognized that food security has quantitative element as well as the qualitative element. For example, if I supply you rice 3 times a day for at least 1 year, can I call you that your qualitative needs of your body are fulfilled? No. So that is why if someone is malnourished, it might happen that he is getting adequate quantity of the food, but the nutrients which are required, he or she is not getting it, and hence we will call that situation as situation of food insecurity. So I hope that the basic definition, the concept of food security is clear to you, that it includes quantity as well as quality part, and both these things must be accessible to all the people at all the times. Then comes the important elements of food security. There are three important elements of food security. First is the availability part. That means that enough food must be available at first instance to supply to all the people. And second is the accessibility part. For example, we can imagine a situation that there is a certain group of people who are living here. Availability of food, let's say at a distance of 20 kilometers. That means that the first element of food security is ensured, that is the adequate availability, but that food must be transported to them. This is the second element, that is the accessibility part, whether this food is accessible to this. Now to understand accessibility, you must understand that accessibility can be in physical terms, accessibility can be in economic terms. For example, we have supplied the food to this particular section of people, but that food is not cheap and it is so expensive that this particular population is not able to afford that food. Again, then we are not making the food easily accessible, that is the economic accessibility is not ensured. Then the third element of the food security is the utility. Does this food has utility for this section? For example, let's say this is a tribal population, and if we are not supplying the food which this section of population demands, again our entire objective of food security will be defeated. Hence, the utility is based on the consumption patterns of the section of society. So, in order to ensure food security, you must focus on all these elements: quantity, quality, availability, accessibility, as well as utility. Now, the third important part of food security is the components of the food security. Now, the components of the food security with reference to India are two important things. One is the buffer stock. We all know that what is buffer stock? That is that minimum amount of food which is stored by the government in order to tackle the issues of inflation, food insecurity, hunger, malnutrition. The food which is stored as a buffer stock is then distributed to the population in order to reduce their vulnerabilities. Second is the PDS, that is public distribution system. The food which is stored in the buffer stock is provided to the population at a subsidized rate through the retail outlets, and this is what is known as public distribution system. So the basic concept of the food security deals with all these three things. Now let us see that how the concept of the food security system in India has evolved. Now the chart in front of you shows you the chronological order in which the food system in India has evolved. So the system started in 1950s when several states enacted their own state APMC Act. Now under these APMC Acts, there were a system of mandi which was established whereby farmers can go and sell their produce. Then from these mandis, this food were bought by the end consumers. So this was done in order to have twofold objectives. First was to support the farmers so that the farmers can sell their produce easily. And second was to have a one-stop platform from where the consumers can buy that food. But there were a huge cases of corruption and leakages in this, and that is why this system could not bring us the desired objectives. In the next decade, that is the decade of 1960s, India witnessed a green revolution. Now, green revolution increased the agricultural production as well as productivity. Now, what is the difference between production and productivity? Production is absolute in nature. For example, let's say we have one agricultural field and this agricultural field is producing 100 quintals of wheat per year. In the next year, suppose we make one another agricultural field and we sow the seeds, and again this field is giving us 100 quintals. That means now we are getting 200 quintals of wheat from two agricultural fields. So this is rise in the absolute terms. Earlier we were getting only 100, but now because we have doubled our fields and hence we have doubled our production. This is the absolute rise, hence this is production. If somehow with the application of modern agricultural technologies, we are able to get 200 quintals instead of 100 quintals from that very agricultural field, this will be known as productivity. Productivity is measured per unit of land. So with the coming of the Green Revolution, production as well as productivity both increased. In 1960s, then Food Corporation of India was established as an institution to manage the food ecosystem in India. And in this very line, the policy of MSP, that is minimum support price, started, whereby it was guaranteed that if the farmers are producing certain crops, they will be guaranteed that they will be paid a certain minimum amount in order to protect those farmers. In 1970s, we witnessed the White Revolution. As the Green Revolution was primarily in the terms of wheat and rice, the White Revolution was primarily in the dairy sector. Then in 1980s, we witnessed that MSP was expanded for other crops also. For example, not just rice and wheat, they were expanded to other crops. And also the similar type of system was started in the sugarcane industry also, which was known as FARP system. In the next decade, in 1990s, we witnessed the starting of the decentralized procurement, whereby the states were allowed to procure directly from the farmers and then distribute them to the consumers. This reduced the amount of cost involved. This reduced the time because the states became the immediate authority to coordinate with the farmers, and therefore the decentralized procurement system worked significantly. In this very decade, we also started targeted public distribution system in order to reduce further leakages and to ensure effective implementation of PDS. Also, in this very decade, we came up with a midday meal scheme to specifically focus towards the food needs of children who are going to school. In 2020s, India came up with Antyodaya Yojana in order to benefit the poorest of the poor section. In 2013, then we came up with the National Food Security Act, whereby a legal guarantee was made to ensure subsidized food grains to almost 67% of the total population of India. And in the recent times, we have again come up with numerous schemes to ensure food security. For example, One Nation, One Ration Card, fat tax, fortification and biofortification, etc. So this has how the food security system in India has evolved. Despite all this thing, we also know that the food security, the data of malnourishment is not very good for India. If we compare India with other countries, the data suggests us that around 25% of the global hunger population lives in India. Because of the acute malnourishment, 4 out of every 10 children are not able to reap their true potential. National Family Health Survey reports have pointed out that there has been a significant rise in stunting as well as wasting. Further, the WHO report also claimed that India is passing through double burden of disease, which means that undernourishment is still not tackled, and on the sidelines, the overnourishment problem is increasing. And the direct impact of this is the rising cases of obesity among India's youth. So in this very line, we should understand that what are the existing challenges that despite so many steps, still we are not able to tackle this issue in India. There are several challenges in India which hinders the food security. First is the reduced land as well as agriculture productivity. Despite the fact that we witnessed green revolution which increased our agriculture productivity, but in recent times because of the losses in groundwater and excess extraction, because of the recent land use changes, deforestation, because of the soil degradation and excessive use of chemical based fertilizers, our agricultural productivity is deteriorating. Further, because of urbanization, industrialization, rising population, the land available for the agriculture is also getting reduced, and most of these lands are being converted into commercial sites. The second issue is related to the maladministration. Even if we get the enough amount of food with our agencies, there are issues in relation to their administration and distribution. Because of the high corruption, wastage, and poor procurement systems, the food which is there with our agencies is not able to reach to the end consumers. So this shows that the challenge of accessibility still persists. This was in relation to the challenge of availability. Third comes the challenge of distribution. Because of the high logistics costs as well as lack of multimodal logistics, India is not able to distribute its food to the end consumers. And when those end consumers live in remote areas, for example, the hill areas, tribal areas, etc., then the problem grows multifold. The fourth is related to the policy issues. For example, the minimum support price system is highly skewed in nature, focusing excessively on 2 to 3 crops and ignoring the other crops like pulses, maize, millets, etc. Similarly, One Nation, One Ration Card scheme is not still fully functional, and there are also issues related to the migration. In India, we have a very complex migration patterns because what happens is, let us assume that there is a laborer who is in Bihar. For 2 months, he come to Delhi for work, and then after 2 months, he shifts to Gujarat, and then with the change of seasons, he shifts to Karnataka, and then again, let's say he comes back to Bihar to support his family, and this cycle continues. So what happens is that due to regular and continuous shifting of these laborers, it becomes very difficult to track them. And if we are not able to track them, then we cannot supply the continuous food to them, obviously. Because for 2 months he is getting registered in Delhi, then for next few months he is getting registered in some other state. So this becomes very complex and we still do not have dedicated policy to address this particular issue, because one nation one ration card is still not fully functional. Then the next challenge is in relation to the rising weather extremities. We all know that disasters like floods, droughts, cyclones, heat waves, cold waves, all these have tremendously increased in the backdrop of climate change, and these weather extremities directly impact the crops, their production as well as productivity. And the last challenge is of the social dimension. Now, because of very high population, there is a very high competition as well. There are certain sections who are more dominant, they have adequate access to food resources, but then there are vulnerable sections also. For example, minorities, tribal areas, transgenders. These population do not have access to adequate food. So hence, the food security in India also has a very strong social biasness. Then comes the poverty part as well as education part. People are not educated, they are not aware about the dietary needs of their body, and hence, despite the fact even if they get enough quantity of food, the quality aspect remains ignored. Similarly, because of the poverty, the economic accessibility to these food resources get reduced. So these are the various challenges which still haunt India in order to ensure food security. Now, what is your role? If you are going to be the administrators, then it will be your role to address all these challenges, and hence we must know that what future strategy can we as an administrators adopt in order to tackle this issue and to make India fully food secured and healthy nation. In this regard, now let us see some of the possible steps. First is that we must invest in agricultural innovation. We must focus on integrated pest management practices. We must also focus on agroecological cropping. What is agroecological cropping? This means that farmers must sow those crops which are in harmony to the climate of that particular region as well as to the soil of that region. For example, the water intensive crops like sugarcane, wheat, rice, these crops must not be grown in those areas which are facing acute water crisis. Then we can also invest in organic farming because organic products have proven themselves to have better health benefits for the population, and that is how we can address the quality angle of the food security. Second is then we should have certain policy reforms as well. We must end the open-ended procurement system because this system increases the chances of wastage, which further does not allow the adequate quantity to reach to the end consumers, and a huge amount of food is just wasted. Then we must also focus on the MSP rationalization, and we must make our farmers aware about the MSPs which are also being provided to the other crops as well. And in the last, we must also focus on the reforms of the Food Corporation of India. And these elaborate reforms are already being given by the Shanta Kumar panel. For this, you should also look at certain recommendations given by Shanta Kumar in order to reform the Food Corporation of India. The third issue is we must focus on infrastructure also, as we have witnessed that India has a very high logistics cost to the tune of 12 to 15%, which in turn increases the cost of the products as well. So that is why we must focus on the multi-modal logistics. Then we must also focus on the cold storage, containers and warehouses. This is done in order to increase the shelf life and to reduce the wastage in order to distribute that food efficiently. In the last comes the awareness and sensitization part. If we as educated people do not know that what exactly are our dietary requirements, then how can we expect the people living in tribal areas or rural areas that they know exact dietary requirements of their own? Further, the dietary requirements also change with the changes in the socio-economic as well as cultural levels. So all this must be studied, and then all that information must be spreaded in order to make the people aware for their dietary habits. And for this, Panchayati Raj institutions, self-help groups, NGOs, etc. can be roped in, linking with district administration. So these steps are very essential in order to ensure food security. Now let us revise this topic in brief once again. In the starting, we saw that this topic has appeared on page number 11, and then in 2013 and 2017, UPSC has asked the question with the theme of food security. In this very line, initially we discussed the concept of the food security, its FAO based definition, important elements, and then the important components. Here we understood that food security is not just in the terms of quantity but also in terms of quality, and it must be regular, continuous, as well as reliable. In continuation with this, coming to the specific context of India, we saw that what is the chronology which describes the evolution of the food security systems in India. And here, starting from 1950s till today, we saw that what were the important policies which were taken in each decade in order to fulfill the goals of food security, hunger, as well as malnourishment. Then we came to the challenge part. The question naturally which came to our mind was that despite all these number of steps taken by Government of India as well as state governments, why still we face one of the biggest hunger as well as malnourishment issues in the world? The answer to this question is because there lie several challenges. These challenges are in terms of reduced land and agriculture productivity, maladministration, distribution, policy issues, weather extremities, as well as the social challenges. And in the last, we discussed that how these challenges can be overcome by adopting the future strategy on the basis of investing in agricultural innovations, doing the policy reforms, focusing on the infrastructure to support this food ecosystem, and in the last, focusing towards the increasing awareness and sensitization of all the sections of population across India. So this sessions makes you understand the basics of food security and will definitely help you to write beautiful answers in your mains examination. This topic has appeared in today's The Hindu paper in the Spotlight section. Despite the fact that this topic is purely in the context of the Kerala, and it mentions that how the climate change is drastically altering the crops produced in that particular state. We know that because of the climate change, the monsoonal pattern has been disturbed, and the most severe impact of that disturbance is witnessed by the state of Kerala. However, from the UPSC Civil Service examinations, we should be aware that how climate change leads to crop failure. So that is why in today's session we will discuss the climate change and its impact on the crops. First of all, we know that because of the climate change, there has been average rise in global temperature. And because of the rise in global temperature, the rates of evaporation and precipitation have been drastically altered across several regions, which in turn has led to disturbances in wind patterns and, as a result, disturbances in the rainfall patterns too. The similar pattern has been observed in the Indian subcontinent also. The untimely rainfalls affect the sowing as well as the harvesting season of the crops. There have been instances whereby there have been delayed sowing or early harvesting. Because of this, the yields of the crops reduces. Sometimes because of the rising heat across the Indian mainland, there has been early maturing of the crops, and this early maturing of the crops reduces their yield. The next impact is in the terms of natural disasters. The climate change has increased the intensity as well as frequency of disasters like floods, droughts, heat strokes, etc. All these disasters negatively impact the crop production. For example, let us take floods. Now, floods in turn lead to several other hazards, for example, the soil erosion. And we can imagine the impact that if the topmost layer of the soil, which is mostly fertile in nature, has been eroded, then obviously the crop growing will be severely affected. Similarly, the droughts will reduce the presence of moisture in the crops. And the most severe impact of these droughts are borne by the fruits. Next comes the rise in the pest attacks. Now, most of the pests love the warm temperature. And because of the rising global warming, the habitat which is being developed in the microclimate of the agricultural fields is suitable to various pests. Similarly, because of this rising heat, there has been significantly reduction in the groundwater reservoirs. And if the groundwater reservoirs are reducing, then obviously the water availability to the roots of the crops will in turn reduce. And the last impact is in terms of the nutritional value. Scientific studies point out the fact that because of the rise in the greenhouse gases, especially the carbon dioxide, there has been a reduction in the protein value of several crops. And that is why the nutritional value of these crops are getting reduced. And the same phenomena has been observed in the state of Kerala also. Important crops like cardamom, sugarcane, rice, cashews, tea and coffee, all the crops are negatively affected by the climate change. Now, this particular discussion can help you to use it as an example or a case study in your mains or essay writing, or there can be a specific question in your GS3 mains where you have to analyze the impacts of climate change on agriculture or the crop production. Now we will discuss this topic also in a case study manner. This topic or this example can be used by you in mains as well as ethics answer. Moreover, this can be also illustrated as an example of good governance, women empowerment, and police reforms. So this example is from the state of Tamil Nadu, whereby the government has come up with an innovative reform in their police management system, whereby in year 1992, in the city of Chennai, they established the all-women police station. Now all the police employees in this particular station are women, and that is why they are specifically dedicated to hear the problems which women face. Its objective was to encourage the women to report the cases of crime and harassment which they generally find difficult to narrate a male officer. These police stations also have May I Help You centers to deal with people politely. The personnel which are deployed there handle serious crimes against women or children related to rape, molestation, abduction, dowry deaths, cruelty by husbands, relatives, sexual harassment cases at workplace, etc. And the culprits are booked under the IPCs, the State Women Harassment Act, as well as the POCSO Act. Further, this initiative is not restricted to the law enforcement. This initiative is also focused towards encouraging the awareness campaigns in schools as well as colleges. They aim to educate the children to report the sexual abuse or inappropriate behavior to teachers and parents or contact the police. Despite the fact that this was started as a grassroots reform in the city of Chennai, but now across the state of Tamil Nadu there are more than 200 of all women police stations, and this model has been replicated elsewhere in the country also. So that is why this innovative step can be used by you in three primary dimensions, that is the steps taken by some states in the domain of good governance, women empowerment, as well as the police reforms. So now we will take some of the reference articles. These topics have appeared in today's newspaper, but these topics have already been covered under the DNS of previous days. For example, this particular topic has appeared at page number 6, and this topic talks about the NREGA scheme. This topic is the critical analysis of the recent app-based approach which has been inculcated in the NREGA, and this topic goes in detail talking about the disadvantages which arise due to this app-based NREGA implementation. However, this topic has already been covered by Naved sir in the DNS dated 27th May 2022. Whereby he has discussed in detail about the National Mobile Monitoring Software app which is used to monitor the NREGA related schemes, and he has also discussed the critical analysis part of this. So that is why I request you to go back to the DNS dated 27th May 2022 in order to completely understand the issue of the app-based NREGA implementation. Similarly, another article, that is Brick by Brick, has appeared in the editorial section at page number 6. This topic is in relation to the recent BRICS summit which was hosted by China. In this regard, you should be aware about the basic key facts related to the BRICS. But this topic also has been covered by me only in the DNS dated 18th June 2022, whereby we also have discussed the UPSC previous year question asked in 2014 in relation to the BRICS organization. Here in detail I have discussed the historical background of the BRICS, its formation, then entry of South Africa in it, and the importance of Fortaleza Declaration. We have also discussed about the Sherpa mechanism as well as the possible BRICS Plus plan. So hence you are requested to go back to the DNS dated 18th June 2022 in order to go through the basic key facts related to the BRICS organization. Now is the time for the question of the day. The question from yesterday's DNS was: Open Network for Digital Commerce is an initiative of. There were 4 options given, and option A, that is Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade, is the correct answer. The question from today's DNS is in front of you. The question says that which of the following would be a drastic consequence of climate change on Indian agriculture? There are 4 statements given. First, falling frequency of pest attacks on mature crops. Second, wiping out of top organic layer of soil. Third, early flowering of plants. Fourth, increasing acidity of the soil. So you have to select the correct answer from using the codes given below in 4 options. Option A, 1, 2 and 3 only. Option B, 2, 3 and 4 only. Option C, 1, 2 and 4 only. And option D, 2 and 4 only. So that's all for today. All the very best. Study hard.